Party is seeking cooperation for the establishment of an investigative agency to deal exclusively with corruption among high-ranking officials, which the opposition claims would be the creation of another organ of power. As a result, no progress was made on talks on amending the constitution either. The ruling party says it can't accept the opposition's demands for a semi-presidential system that gives more authority to the prime minister, saying that it could paralyze state affairs and lead to an incompetent president. The opposition, meanwhile, called on the ruling bloc to come up with its own version and not use the president's proposal as a basis, while the Liberty Korea Party suggested party-wide talks along with President Moon Jae-in himself to thrash out their differences. Some opposition parties also criticized calls from the presidential office to revise the law on national referendums so that the public can vote on a constitutional revision in mid-June, saying that although it's a matter that needs to be swiftly dealt with, the executive office shouldn't be at the forefront to pressure the legislative branch of the nation. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
South and North Korea were set to hold working-level talks today, ahead of the upcoming summit in late April. But at North Korea's request, according to the Unification Ministry, those talks have been postponed until tomorrow. They were to discuss issues of protocol, security, and news releases. As of yesterday, the South Korean side was to be led by Cho Han-gi, a presidential secretary on protocol. Today, the North also offered to hold working-level talks on Saturday to discuss ways to set up an inter-Korean hotline at the offices of President Moon Jae-in and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Nuclear weapons experts say if North Korea finally decided to get rid of its nuclear weapons, the denuclearization process would take 2 to 3 years. According to a VOA report, former International Atomic Energy Agency Deputy Director General Olli Heinonen said 2 to 3 years would be enough time for North Korea to dismantle its nuclear weapons and facilities. But he emphasized that the denuclearization process should start with Pyongyang's full disclosure of its nuclear-related facilities and enrichment programs to inspectors to demonstrate its commitment to nuclear dismantlement and to earn the trust of the U.S. The Trump administration is threatening to impose yet more tariffs on some $50 billion worth of Chinese goods. It would be America's most aggressive move on trade with China in decades. Beijing has responded swiftly, saying it'll take measures of equal scale against American goods. Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Newly released tariff measures by the U.S. are raising the possibility of a looming trade war between the United States and China. China's Minister of Commerce said in a statement on Wednesday that it'll take retaliatory measures on American goods right after the U.S. unveiled a list of 1,300 Chinese goods subject to 25% tariffs as part of its punishment against Beijing over alleged intellectual property rights violations. The Chinese Commerce Ministry argues that the U.S. has violated the spirit and principles of the World Trade Organization regulations and says it'll come up with measures that are similar in terms of scale and impact. The list by the U.S. Trade Representative covers annual Chinese imports worth $50 billion, including industrial robots, telecommunications equipment, and biomedical products, which are part of China's 10 major core industrial development projects. Bloomberg reported that the U.S. is trying to undermine China's development efforts in these areas as China tries to move away from its current manufacturing-based economy towards a more technologically advanced economy. The U.S. measures, which will not take effect until May 11th, after public opinion has been gathered, come a day after Beijing slapped tariffs on nearly 130 American items, mainly agricultural goods. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, President Trump says he plans to deploy troops to the border with Mexico until he gets his long-promised border wall. His proposal to boost security comes amid reports of an incoming flow of migrants from Central America. Noadam reports.
President Trump has long been vocal about his plans to build a wall along the U.S.-Mexican border, but it seems he's becoming more frustrated with the lack of progress. Speaking during a visit with Baltic leaders on Wednesday, Trump said he will be calling on the military to guard the border until the wall is complete.
So we are preparing for the military to secure our border between Mexico and the United States. We have a meeting on it in a little while with General Mattis and everybody, and I think that it's something we have to do.
During a luncheon, he added that the U.S. should learn from what he calls strong Mexican border laws.
That's because Mexico has very strong immigration laws, as we should have. We should have those laws. We don't have. We have immigration laws that are laughed at by everybody. And it's got to be changed. We need the wall, we need the protection, and we have to change our immigration laws at the border and elsewhere.
Active duty service members are prohibited by federal law from being used for law enforcement, but the National Guard has been used to boost security at the border in the past. Trump's comments have taken the Pentagon by surprise, which was struggling to answer questions on the exact details of Trump's proposal. Trump's comments came amid reports of a so-called caravan of migrants from Honduras heading for the United States. He has been tweeting about the matter for the past few days and told reporters on Tuesday that the North American Free Trade Agreement was at risk unless Mexico stopped the flow of migrants. Noaram, Arirang News.
I'm Devin Whiting, and those are your news headlines for this hour.
South Korean musicians performed their final show in Pyongyang with North Korea's Samjiyon Orchestra in front of a packed house. The concert ended with an emotional finale as the artists from both sides came together to sing for peace and reunification. Our Kim Mo-gyun reports.
The 160-member art troupe, together with a taekwondo team, returned to South Korea early Wednesday morning, bringing the curtain down on the historic 5-day stay in the North Korean capital. Though the trip was short, pundits say it was a successful event that planted new hopes for a better future between the two Koreas. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's surprise attendance at the first concert on Sunday and his abrupt proposal to hold another concert later this year is seen as a positive sign for further cooperation in the cultural sector. After the second performance on Tuesday, the organizers from both sides spoke of their feelings.
Everyone was so touched that they couldn't believe this is real. I think we will actually realize what happened when we return to South Korea.
I'm glad because I think the concert went well. Both sides did well.
For their last performance on Tuesday, musicians from the two sides began the 2-hour-long concert with their North Korean counterparts at around 3:30 p.m. South Korea time. The concert was held at the 12,000-seat Ryugyong Jeongjuyong Gymnasium, which is 8 times larger than the venue for the first performance held on Sunday. The group, the first South Korean troupe to perform in North Korea since 2005, consisted of nearly a dozen artists, including legendary singers Cho Yong-pil and Lee Sun-hee, K-pop stars Red Velvet, and Seohyun of Girls' Generation. Unlike the first concert on Sunday, where Seohyun emceed by herself, this time she was accompanied by Choi Hyo-sung, a reporter from North Korean Central TV. The joint performance ended with a standing ovation after all the musicians sang 2 famous songs together, North Korea's See You Again and South Korea's Our Wish is Reunification. Following the performance, the South Korean artists, together with Culture Minister Do Jong-hwan, attended a dinner hosted by Kim Young-chul, Vice Chairman of the Central Committee of North Korea's Workers' Party. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
And to tell us more about the latest cultural exchange between the two Koreas, as well as the postponed working-level talks on the April 27th summit, Dr. Zhang Yaba, a research fellow at the Sejong Institute, joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Thank you for having me today.
Okay, so like we saw in the report, South Korean musicians returned home on Wednesday after their concerts on Sunday and Tuesday evening. Now, tell us more about them and also what impact might such cultural exchanges between the two Koreas may have on future inter-Korean relations.
It was actually a very good and promising sign that two Koreas have agreed to host this kind of show in North Korea because this kind of show has not been held in a decade. When we had rather good relations with North Korea, this kind of cultural exchange was possible. But after North Korea's rapid development of nuclear and missile technology, this kind of cultural exchange was not possible. But this time, it was very surprising that Kim Jong-un himself attended a show and took a picture with a Korean artist. Right. And even North Korean newspaper put those pictures on their first page. So I think that Kim Jong-un tries to show to the world that his approach to this kind of cultural exchange is different from his predecessors, like his father and his grandfather. So maybe they still have some kind of worries about cultural penetration into the North Korean people, but North Korean government try to show to the world that they are trying to accept as fast as possible of these kind of South Korea's cultures into North Korea by because they want to improve their image before the North and South summit and also the possible summit with the United States.
And it seemed that North Korea lifted a lot of the restrictions that it had before in regards to filming and stuff, too.
Yes, it was reported that before when South Korean performers went to Pyongyang and North Korea to do this kind of musical performance, they intervened to check what kind of song that South Korean artists are going to play, or is there any problems in the lyrics of the Korean songs, because they think that this is too much like capitalistic. So because they still have like socialist ideology. So, but it was reported that this time they really didn't interfere with the Korean authorities to pick up songs and what kind of music that they are going to play. So it was some development there.
All right. Well, let's turn our eyes to the working level talks, which were supposed to be held today, but has been postponed by North Korea's request to tomorrow. Now, although the Unification Ministry said yesterday that Pyongyang gave no apparent reasons for this delay, but what could be some of the reasons for North Korea's postponing this event?
Actually, this time the working level meeting was for the protocols and like secret services and also the media arrangement. So South Korean delegation for the working level meeting this time is from the presidential office, who's dealing with these three issues: protocols, secret services, and the media arrangement. So I'm not sure whether North Korea is really ready to send the delegations who really have done this, because North Korean system is quite different from ours.
Right.
So whether they have same equivalent department of doing this protocol and secret services and the media arrangement. So I think that might be the reason that North Korea want one more day to do this. And our Ministry of Unification did not say Minister of Unification said that this was not a bad sign of canceling the meeting at all, because we are going to have another meeting on 7th about the communication related issues. So I think it's just a one day postponement, not canceling.
All right, but then, I mean, will this delay really not affect the summit itself? And also, I have questions over whether this could perhaps happen for the upcoming high-level talks, as well as even the summit itself.
That in the past, there are many occasions that we observed like sudden cancellation by North Korea on this kind of meetings. So probably we will see some occasions that North Korea canceled the meeting a couple days ago or a couple hours ago. But this time, it is apparent that North Korea needs to have a talk with South Korea, because they are under really hard pressure from the international sanctions. And that is why they came first to have a dialogue with the South Korean government. So I really don't think that, unless they think that denuclearization is not an option for them, but as long as they are interested in denuclearization talk with the international community, I don't really think that they are going to cancel meetings or high-level. Maybe there can be some adjustment of schedules, because North Korean system is quite different from us. But I really don't think that they are going to cancel the meetings, which will affect the North and South Summit in April 27th. So we will see these kind of things a lot of times in the future, but I don't think it's that worrisome.
Okay, so I mean, they have too much on stake for them to cancel this, right?
Right.
Well, now, like you said, the two Koreas are also expected to discuss ways to set up the communications hotline when they meet for talks on Saturday as well. Tell us more about this.
So when South Korean special envoy visited Pyongyang in early March, that they agreed to have this hotline between the leaders of two Koreas. And they also said that two leaders are going to have a talk over this phone hotline before the summit. But there are issues with like so-called like working level issues in establishing these hotline because there are technical issues as well as a lot of discussions on the military issues because this kind of hotline is not just a civil use, but it has to involve with like military technology to be all those secret issues. That is why on April 7th, they are going to meet to discuss about this establishing communication over hotline between two leaders. So I think that we will observe a lot of cases with these working level meetings to discuss these technical matters, not for like strategic politically. Those issues are going to be dealt by the high-level meetings. So issues of the agendas on the summit will be discussed at the high-level meetings. But we should have a lot of meetings with North Koreans at the working level to talk with the technical issues. And yeah, there are a lot of things that we have to talk, like media, protocols, secret services, communications, and even the transportation. Because it is believed that Kim Jong-un is going to come close the MDL when there's on the day of summit. So there's going to be like military talks because it has to be involved with the military because it's a military guarded area. So we will have a lot of working level meetings from various departments of the government and government agencies.
All right. Well, you mentioned a lot of it, but of course that there are a lot of firsts to this inter-Korean summit with Kim Jong-un being one of the first North Korean leaders to be setting his foot on South Korean soil and all. So what else is left on the calendar then between now and the summit itself on April 27th?
So as we discussed that there are going to be working level meetings, of course, and also there are going to be high level meetings to set up the agendas for the meetings because there has been concerns about whether the denuclearization can be seriously discussed at the leaders level on April 27th. Because North Korea has not directly contacted the United States yet about their interest in denuclearizing North Korea. So unless there's an improvement between North Korea and the United States, it's quite difficult for South Korean government to achieve successful summit with the North Korea. So I think that we will have a couple more high-level meetings before the summit, and also from the international arena that Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is going to visit United States on April 17th until the 20th to discuss about the North Korean issues. And also Prime Minister Abe invited President Moon Jae-in to Japan before the April 27th summit to discuss the North Korean denuclearization issues. So we have less than 3 weeks, and we are going to see a lot of international events and inter-Korean events, and also the working level meetings. So it's full pack of news until then.
And now, meanwhile, North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho held talks with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on Tuesday as a follow-up discussion after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with Chinese President Xi Jinping just last week. So what came out of that meeting?
It was actually the Lee Yong-ho's travel to Azerbaijan for the non-allied movement conference there. During the Cold War period, many countries do not join the Western or Soviet blocs, and North Korea is one of the countries joined that community. So while Lee Yong-ho is going to attend the meeting at Azerbaijan, he stopped by at China and have a meeting with Wang Yi. And I think the reason behind that is to show to the United States and South Korea that North Korea has reestablished its relations with China, so they can go together against United States for the possible summit, because many believe that North Korea is coming out for the discussion with the United States is by the pressure by United States and the international community. So North Korea needs some kind of friend, good friend, to best support them. So that is why North Korea is trying to reestablish its relations with the long-time ally China. So that is why, even though it's a very short visit by Lee Yong-ho, of this time. But I think it's one way to show to the world that North Korea and China is reestablishing its relations.
And kind of going along with that, Lee Yong-ho is expected to head over to Russia as well. So there are questions as to whether North Korea may be trying to strengthen this trilateral alliance between China, Russia, and North Korea.
Yes, it is very important for North Korea to have strategically re-established its relations with China and Russia because they are the most important two countries which support North Korea.
Right.
And also from the economic perspective that China and Russia is the main economic supplier for North Korea. So while those two countries are still cooperating with the United Nations sanction regime against North Korea, but North Korea is trying to find a way that whether there is a possible way for North Koreans to evade and working a way that China and Russia can help North Korea to evade sanctions, to improve economic conditions of North Korea. It is because it is important for North Korea because if North Korea is pressed so hard, their negotiating position is going to be so weak.
Right.
That means that North Korea has to accept many requests by the United States when they are really negotiating the denuclearization issues. So I think that is why North Korea is trying to rebuild its relations with China and Russia, which can be its good friend when North Korea has to negotiate with the United States. So probably we will see more news of this kind in the near future before April 27th summit and the possible summit with the United States.
And it seems like North Korea is trying to reach out to Europe as well, which is putting a lot of sanctions and pressure on North Korea itself. So some say that North Korea's Director for European Affairs, Kim Sung-young, is preparing to meet with senior European Union officials as early as this week. So I guess they're trying really hard to boost their image internationally.
Yes, I think it's not just only about their image, but there are also practical reasons that why North Korea is trying to rebuild their diplomatic relations with many countries. And as you just mentioned, that EU is one of the countries that put unilateral sanctions on North Korea. So besides UN sanctions, EU put another unilateral sanctions on North Korea. So maybe this time, the visit this time by North Korean government officials to EU is trying to find a way that whether they can lift some kind of sanctions when they sat with the United States and international community on the denuclearization, because they have to know that what they can get if they come to the negotiating table with the international community. So because for the negotiating tactics that North Korea has to know what they can get from it. So they are trying to test the water in many countries this time.
All right, so there are differing views on how this denuclearization process will go from here on out. So, I mean, in the past, how have the two Koreas dealt with the nuclear issue involving North Korea?
The most important one in the past was 1992, the joint declaration of denuclearization of Korean Peninsula between two Koreas. And at that time, it was ironically that South Korea has tactical nuclear weapons introduced by the USFK, and North Korea was not believed to have any nuclear weapons. So, like China and Russia had some nuclear weapons. It was believed that China and Russia had some nuclear weapons in the past in North Korean territory, but it was removed. And after 1992 joint declaration, that also the tactical nuclear weapons on South Korean territory was removed. But the problem is that after couple agreement and the negotiation between North Korea and the international community, that North Korea did its first nuclear test in 2006. So we had 1994 Geneva Agreement and 2005 September 19 agreement, and also 2007 February 13 agreement to implement September 19 agreement between North Korea and with the six-party countries. So we had some history of past agreement, but all the time, the problem was that it was not implemented successfully.
Right.
So the most important question this time for the South Korean and North Korean summit is whether we are going to have some kind of measures to secure the implementation process rather than agreement, because we already have some kind of template for the agreement, but we don't know whether we can successfully implement it. So more question is about whether North Korea is going to accept the US and South Korea's like coercive way of putting them on the like implementation.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for your insight today.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our program, but make sure to tune in to Arirang News for more domestic and global news updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching and goodbye.